Double O 07. Come in. Come in.
What's your name?
Chumi.
Really? Who's she?
Paula Ivanova.
This is Miss Penelope Smallbone, my new assistant.
Hi, I'm Plenty.
But of course you are.
Good night.
She's just coming, sir.
I thought Christmas only comes once a year.
I'm Mr. Arlington Beach, professional gambler, and you're Miss Stephanie Broadchester, heiress.
I am not.
You're gonna have to trust me on this.
That's my little octopus.
Ah, the world of 007. A world filled with gadgets, chicks, cars, girls, exotic locations, villains, and chicks. Throughout the series' history, Bond has had the audacious duty to sleep with hundreds of the world's most beautiful women.
Don't judge it too harshly, my dear. Field operatives must often use every means at their disposal to achieve their objectives.
Bullshit!
I mean, Bond has probably slept with more women than there are Pokemon.
I'll search across the land, look far and wide, release from my hand the power that's inside.
Electra, Waylon, Anya, Tiffany, Pussy, Honey, Domino, Kissy, Melina, Vesper, Aki, Stacy, Severin, Goodhead, Solitaire, Chumi.
There are 150 that want his D. It's weird that Bond never gets an STD.
Gotta catch 'em all, Pokemon.
So in this episode we're taking a look at my top 10 Bond girls. And by Bond girls I mean the female co-stars that are or end up on Bond's side throughout the films. So we're not looking at the evil henchwomen or femme fatales if you will. I'll do that in a separate episode. Also, I'm ranking these solely based around the actual characters these women portrayed and the impact they had on the series. Because if I had to rank these women solely based on how hot I think they are, that would make for an entirely different video. You know what? That's a good idea. Top 10 hottest Bond girls. Yeah, I'm definitely doing that too.
Forgive me, darling. Your turn will come, I promise.
There are so many Bond girls to choose from, so there were bound to be some honorable mentions. Tatiana Romanova is classic. The scene of her lying naked in Bond's hotel room, meeting him for the first time, is so iconic. It was used as the audition scene for new Bond actors throughout the years. I love her innocence and the way her character is kept so close to Fleming's vision of her. She just didn't make the cut. I also have to mention Wei Lin, who essentially is another one in the long line of female secret agents that Bond teams up with, and arguably the one that did that the best. Among all Bond girls, she's easily the most skilled in martial arts, and it's fantastic she did all the stunt work and fighting herself. Shame the romance side of things felt a bit forced. As for the dishonorable mention, fans usually shit on Denise Richards being the worst one, being a terrible actress casted as a nuclear physicist. But to me, Tanya Roberts playing a state geologist really isn't any better.
These green lights, they're Zorn's oil wells. The ones he's been using to pump seawater into the Hayward Fault. These lead straight into this section of the San Andreas Fault. You know, Zorn just has to blast through the bottom of these lakes to flood the fault.
Except right beneath us is the key geological lock that keeps the faults from moving at once.
I mean, you can totally picture Roger Moore thinking like, "Forgive me, darling, but you have no idea what you're talking about." And then there is her signature helpless bimbo screaming.
Jane, help me! Jane! Jane! Jane!
She didn't even notice a frickin' Zeppelin sneaking up on her. I mean, if I was Bond, I would have been like, "Good job, Zorin, you deal with her. I'm just gonna screw Paula Ivanova instead."
What are you doing here?
Looking for shells?
No, I'm just looking.
No Bond girl ranking would be complete without the one, the original, Ursula Andress as Honey Rider. Well, technically Sylvia Trench would be the first Bond girl we ever see. Or, if you want to be really precise, Linda Christian, starring in the very first television adaptation of Casino Royale in 1954. But no one can deny that Ursula Andress can be considered the quintessential Bond girl. When this chick first emerged from the ocean in the theaters back in '62, not only did she cause a tidal wave of hormones and etched her half-naked image deeply into young boys' psyche all across the globe, but the impact of that scene is still considered to be one of the most iconic and memorable moments in cinematic history. It's been parodied and homaged so many times. You gotta understand, a woman appearing in a bikini in full color is not a big deal nowadays, but was something completely unseen and unheard of in the early 60s. She's the ultimate symbol of all Bond girls and really shows that being a Bond girl is empowering and a fantastic honor, unlike what feminists like you to believe. And even though character-wise Honey was nothing special, she was essentially just an uneducated wildlife beauty looking for shells in Crab Key. Heck, Broccoli and Saltzman casted her simply after seeing a picture of her in a wet t-shirt. But the point is the incredible impact this young woman had on cinema. When you think Bond girl, you think Ursula Andress.
It's the time before we leave for lesson number 3.
Absolutely. There's no sense in going off half-cocked.
Solitaire is a very unique Bond girl, a tarot card reader used by Kananga to predict the future using her psychic powers. I could definitely use my own Solitaire, for the greater good of course. Football match results and lottery numbers, but certainly nothing illegal. She does lose her powers as soon as you have sex with her though. Yeah, no chance I'm ever gonna see those powers in action. It's remarkable though, she's probably the only virgin Bond girl. Well, at least the only one where it's actually stated that Bond takes her virginity.
Come on, cheer up, darling. Has to be a first time for everyone.
It's kind of weird though that makes her lose the powers. Most women I come across seem to think they get all kinds of powers after you sleep with them. But she did turn into a nympho as soon as Bond slept with her, so, you know, nice. Anyway, Solitaire is a classic Bond girl. The innocence and mystique surrounding her character makes her one of the more intriguing and memorable Bond girls in the series.
Who are you?
My name is Pussy Galore.
I must be dreaming.
Speaking of iconic and memorable Bond girls, who doesn't know Miss Pussy Galore? If you think Bond girls only became strong and independent women in the modern times, just look at Honor Blackman back in 1964. She was a tough girl who didn't take crap from Bond. In the novel she was a lesbian, and in the movie that's not officially stated, though it's definitely implied.
You can turn off the charm. I'm immune.
Of course, Bond manages to overman her and convert her, but hey, he's Bond. Pussy Galore is one of the most beloved and iconic Bond girls in the series. She's strong, she's skilled, she can fly airplanes, wears golden outfits, and has a squadron of chicks with pointy tits backing her up. Pussy Galore is part of the many fantastic elements that make Goldfinger such an iconic film. My only complaint is that they made a script change of her introduction scene, because I recently found out that scene would originally go like this. I am Pussy Galore. Yes, of course you are. But what is your name? And come on, that would have been even better.
007. Triple X. Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British hand up, sir.
007 teaming up with a female secret agent is not something out of the ordinary anymore. It was done for the first time in You Only Live Twice with Aki and Kissy, but then it was brought to the next level in 1977's The Spy Who Loved Me. And sure, it was done countless times since with Dr. Goodhead, Pam Bouvier, Jinx, Camille, and the earlier mentioned Wei Lin, but in my opinion it was Barbara Buck who really set the standard for this type of Bond girl. Bond being forced to team up with a KGB agent during the Cold War to take down a megalomaniac supervillain is just timeless. She uses her own nifty little gadgets and outsmarts Bond a couple of times.
Shaken, but not stirred.
She was one of those Bond girls that had the potential to be 007's equal. To a certain extent, of course. I mean, there was still a part in which she ended up being a damsel in distress who all of a sudden swapped her uniform for a sexy dress for the audience's convenience. But hey, I never complained.
Only a certain kind of woman wears a backless dress with a Beretta 70 strapped to her thigh.
One can never be too careful when handsome men in tuxedos carry walkthroughs.
Severin definitely is one of the most interesting Bond girls in recent years. And I think the biggest downside to her character is that she isn't in Skyfall for long enough. In the few scenes we get with her, I for one immediately got invested into her character. That's not just because she's insanely hot. No, really, the character. I thought her character was interesting too. It's not often Bond runs across girls who were victim of the Macau sex trade in their past, but it immediately gets you more invested into her. Essentially, when you really think about it, she was mainly used as a plot device. We are led on to believe that Bond will rescue her from the hands of Silva after she discussed her dark past with him. But this was really just an easy way to introduce Bond to Silva. It was quite shocking to see her get killed just like that. And yet, Béatrice Marlowe manages to steal every scene she does appear in. To me, she really had the potential to be one of the best Bond girls had she had more impact on the actual story. But fear not, I can already spoil to you, you'll definitely see more of her once I get to that top 10 hottest Bond girls episode. You can see it in this girl's eyes. When her parents got killed, something flipped, something inside of her changed. Melina was not gonna be your everyday happy-go-bang Bond girl, but for the first time in years, things were dead serious, and as a result we get one of the most underrated badass Bond girls in the series. Melina is on a private vendetta to find the people responsible for killing her parents, and armed with her brains, a crossbow and a bright yellow Citroen 2CV, this chick is not about to be stopped from doing so.
The Chinese have a saying: before setting out on revenge, you first dig 2 graves.
I don't expect you to understand. You're English. But I'm half Greek. And Greek women, like Electra, always avenged their loved ones.
Melina was one of the more realistic and refreshing Bond girls that Roger Moore's Bond runs across, and I definitely like her for it. A great Bond girl is when they are unique and different to the norm, when they have a little bit of a personal backstory and some relevance to the actual plot. And Melina falls into that description perfectly.
Your Royal Highnesses, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, the toast is the bride and bridegroom, Mr. and Mrs. James Bond.
Of course, the one and only Bond girl that Bond has married has got to be on the list. Tracy easily is one of the best things to Majesty's, and I made it no secret in my recapping episode of that film that I'm in the minority of people who isn't the biggest fan. However, I am a fan of Tracy, who for me is the main reason to watch the movie. If you read the Fleming novels, you'll know that among all the girls Bond runs across, there were 2 that really had a significant impact on him. And in Majesty's, Diana Rigg translated one of them to the screen in such a masterful way. Her acting is just spot on. You can totally believe that this could be the woman that Bond would lose his heart to. Strong, yet emotional. Skilled, yet deeply damaged. Still, to this day at least, she remains to be the only Bond girl we saw Bond getting married to. And that final scene still is one of the most heartbreaking moments in the series. I sometimes just wish he would have been paired up with Connery's Bond instead though. Having seen his Bond casually sleep around with multiple Bond girls in the past 5 Bond movies and then finally lose his heart to this woman could have really given this movie a greater impact.
Well, you can't win them all.
Dumb, stubborn, stupid.
What's that supposed to mean?
What kind of horse?
You're calling me a horse's ass.
So here's my pick for one of the most overlooked and underrated Bond girls in the series. With the more realistic tone of The Living Daylights, we got a very welcomed, fresh take on a sweet and innocent Bond girl who gets mixed up in crazy affairs between the Soviets and British in the midst of the Cold War. She's almost like a more modern Tatiana Romanova. Kara is not a secret agent, a skilled fighter or a dangerous tough girl. She's quite the opposite, but yet her innocence grounds the movie and keeps you invested in her character. She does have her own talents, has relevance to the story and definitely isn't a bimbo. Throughout the film you really get the sense that Bond genuinely started to care for this girl and could actually fall for her. I mean, it is extremely rare for 007's heart to be melted, but I always got the sense that somehow Kara really got close. With those big brown eyes and that heartwarming smile, Marion Dabo just fits the bill perfectly, and I for one think she really deserves to be high up the list.
Stay below 600 feet.
500 feet.
Who's that?
Natalia Simonova,
Natalia Semyonova.
Russian Minister of Transportation.
Did you check her out?
Head to toe.
Natalia Semyonova simply is one of the most interesting, appealing and well-rounded Bond girls the series ever had. Isabella Scorupco brought the character into the 90s in such a contemporary way. She's smart and as the audience you actually believe this girl has the brains. Heck, it's practically thanks to her that London is saved and the GoldenEye gets destroyed. She's sexy and she can pull off the strong, independent woman side of things too.
24 for the American school, 11 for the Swedish, IBM compatible with 500 meg hard drives, CD-ROM and 14 for modems.
You pay dollars?
Of course.
If Madam would require a demonstration,
Madam requires one demonstration model and a quiet place to test it.
Most of all, Natalia is human. Throughout the film you can't help but become invested into her backstory, being the lone survivor of the GoldenEye blast in Severnaya, and feel for what she's been through. And also, out of all the Bond girls Brosnan gets in his 4 Bond movies, she's easily the one he has the best chemistry with.
So, tell me, are there any other standard operating procedures I should be aware of, Commander?
Thousands. But I only pay them lip service.
So as charming as you are, Mr. Bond, I will be keeping my eye on our government's money and off your perfectly formed house.
You noticed.
To the average Bond fan, this probably comes as no surprise at all, as Vesper is often considered to be the best Bond girl, and well, to me she definitely is too. In Fleming's first novel, Bond ends up losing his heart to the mysterious Vesper Lind, who ends up falling in love with him as well, but is revealed to be blackmailed into being a double agent and has no choice but to commit suicide in the end. This brings such a scar to Bond's heart that it's likely what causes him to never be able to fully give himself to women again, resulting in him becoming the heartless, charming ladies man we know he is today. And in the reboot of the series, we see this saga played out superbly by Daniel Craig and Eva Green. I mean, Vesper just is a Bond girl in a complete league of her own. She's the deepest and most three-dimensional Bond girl that the series ever saw. Of course, a large part of that can be contributed to Fleming's writing, but Eva Green definitely deserves praise for getting this spot on. I think the chemistry between her and Craig is what made this work so extremely well, and what separates her, for me at least, from Tracy, the other Bond girl that had a significant impact on the character of Bond. That's why I said earlier that I just wish Diana Rigg was paired with Connery instead, and see if the whole falling in love part would have been more believable. Because with these two, I completely buy it. You literally see Bond slowly drop his armor throughout the film and eventually giving his all to her, being completely happy and resigning the service. And when she drowns herself at the end of the film, it really has an enormous impact. You can really feel Bond's pain. Vesper's influence on Bond is continued to be seen in the later novels, and now also in the later Bond films, like it should be. And I'm so glad they did that. I think in every man's life, there are always only one or two girls you come across that are just this tiny extra bit more special than all the others you encounter on your path. During your lifetime, the most beautiful, intelligent, sweet and exotic women can walk into your life, but some will just have that extra spark, even if you don't end up with them. And in Bond's case, that one is Vesper. And that concludes my top 10 Bond girls. How did you like the list, and what would yours be? Be sure to share your thoughts.
Like a Hellcat.